on the other side and to be together.
Well, I hope for the calmer time, yeah.
Oh, hey Larissa, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you, Larissa?
Yeah, not too bad. Good week so far?
Uh, yeah, enjoying the sunshine. I feel like life is just better when it's sunny, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely like it makes it feel brighter, doesn't it?
yes.
Although I still think we're in that kind of weird period where you look outside and it looks sunny, and so you're like, great, this is like shorts and t-shirt weather. And the second you walk outside, you're like, it's not shorts and t-shirt weather. It's
I know.
still
Two
still
coats.
definitely need the
Two coats
jacket.
weather.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh, uh, hey Alex, hey Hannah, hey
Hi,
Kate,
Jimmy.
Oh,
how you guys doing?
Yeah, loving the
Yeah.
sunshine, like everyone said, but also being caught off guard when you go outside, especially because it's windy today and it's an icy wind that cuts straight through you. So,
Yeah. It's the it's the kind of opposite way around. You always get the kind of this is the actual temperature and then this is the feels like temperature. And I always think the feels like temperature that should just be the temperature, right? Oh, hey Leanne, how you doing?
yeah, good, thank you.
Good, good. Right. So how many are we on? We're on six. It's a few more. Um,
I'll just double check my emails, see if anything has come in from anybody.
Claire was telling me you guys are on for a super intense salmon swimming day today. Double sessions.
There we go. No, I don't have anything else from anybody, so
No? Right, cool. Well, should we dive in, and if people arrive, then yeah, they can kind of we can get started. I think I've met everybody on the last call, but I'm subbing in for Laura today. My name's Jimmy. I also work as a giant leadership coach consultant. So yeah, doing lots of stuff with kind of people like Laura up and down the country. Yeah, really excited to kind of be here with you guys today, and even more excited that we're covering one of my favorite tools today, the influence model. So did everybody manage to watch the videos? Everyone kind of up to speed? Yeah, great, wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen. Um, so there we go. Is that coming up all right? Brilliant. So as always, way kind of starting with a bit of a Bible verse. Luke 2:52, this verse, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and all the people. And I think this is such an interesting one because obviously whenever we think about Jesus, we think about Jesus as this kind of perfect person that kind of that like that he was a finished product. But actually, that key word there is Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. There was this intentionality from him that how do I be self-aware? How do I get better in these areas? How do I seek to expand my awareness within that? And actually, that wasn't just for his own benefit, but actually that was with he's also growing in favor with God and with all the people. And so, the tool that we're looking at today, I think this is such a helpful kind of place to start from. That idea that if it was important for Jesus, it's doubly more important for us. Um, so. Um, so the influence model, this is the kind of tool which we're going to be looking at today. Hopefully the video kind of helped, but we're going to show you an additional slide which just kind of hopefully might help walk it through a little bit. So this is a tool really helping you to think about how do I build that influence and that impact with the people around me, whether that's people in your team, people who you're interacting with, friends, family. One of the reasons I love it is that there's so many different levels and layers to this, and it's so easily applicable. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off focusing on that first bit. So this bit over here on the left. So thinking about that initial stage in this, of how do I go about building trust? And you've got four different stages within that. So the first of those is character. And character, I think, kind of sometimes like if people say, "Oh, I don't really trust your character," that feels like quite a bit of a gut punch, doesn't it? But it's that kind of it's really it's about integrity. Like, do I believe that you say you're going to do what you're going to do? Then there's that chemistry piece, like how likable are you? Like, do I want to work with you? Like, are the vibes there? Then coming over to the other side, you've got that competency piece. Like, do you know what you're talking about? Do I feel reassured that you are competent, that you're knowledgeable in this area? And then the credibility piece, sometimes that competency credibility, they feel like they kind of overlap. The credibility is really about kind of track record. Like, have you done this before? Can you do it again? Are you kind of reliable in that field? But also, are you relevant in my world? That actually, can you take what it is that you know and contextualize it so it's relevant for me? And so for all of us, with each of those four, we need all four. But we'll naturally be good at some, and others they'll feel more kind of left hand, like we'll have to be more intentional about how we do that. So there we go, a little bit of a new graphic for you. So I'm going to kind of work my way through each of these, and then we'll kind of go into script and do a bit of reflection on this. So for nurturers, you'll see that character piece. That's an out and out green. That character, that chemistry piece. That actually nurturers are really good at that stuff. They're people first, people orientated people. So they're always going to be working hard on how do we make sure that we're valuing people, that people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued. That chemistry piece, that kind of, if you're more of an introverted nurturer, that actually sometimes that kind of how you engage with people, you can sometimes be a little bit quieter. Competency, though, is the one which is red. And what's really important here is not that nurturers aren't competent, because nurturers absolutely are competent, but to show competency will often feel, for a nurturer, it feels a bit braggy. It feels like I'm showing off. It feels like I'm kind of telling you how great I am. That credibility piece that kind of you'll know as a nurturer sitting in the room, like everyone's got great ideas. Why would I kind of share my ideas first? We'll go with other people's ideas. But actually, the risk with that is that actually, if we're not demonstrating our competency, if we're not talking about what we're bringing to the table, what our skill set looks like, if we're deferring to other people's ideas, that to sit on the other side of you, it's really easy to begin to question a nurturer's competency or credibility. And so we talk about with a nurturer, one of the key kind of learnings for them is learning to demonstrate that competence, that actually having that confidence that actually I'm bringing real value to the table. Then you've got your creatives. Creatives, you're splitting into your two. So you kind of thinker creatives and your feeler creatives. So feeler creatives, so creative connectors. Again, that character piece, and you'll see for both the creatives, that character piece is huge. And actually reframing it as that idea of integrity, that totally makes sense, that we are who we say we are. But actually for the creative connectors, that the chemistry bit, you've got to be yellow coming in, the competency is where it drops off again. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that for a creative, often being able to articulate what it is that I actually really think here, that there's loads of ideas going on in the head of a creative. And so it's really easy for them to go off on tangents, or not to fully communicate something, or to feel like it's a bit all over the place. And actually, again, that kind of lack of focus, not saying that they are, but if you sit on the other side, it's really easy to interpret that as that kind of it's a lack of competency, that you don't really know what you're talking about, you haven't really thought this through. For the thinker versions of creatives, so creative pioneers, that actually the big red for them is the chemistry piece. That creative pioneers have got a habit of being a little bit standoffish, that kind of their body language, their tone of voice, that can really betray them. And because they're living in their head, like if you know any creative pioneers, you'll know that if someone shares an idea with you and you think it's a stupid idea, you can't help it. Your face will immediately tell you that that's a stupid idea. And so it's really easy for that creative pioneer to be holding their cards really close. I'm not going to tell you what I really think until I'm really sure. And actually that knock on of reading the body language and not having the narrative about what you really think about this means that you're a little bit harder to engage with. And that chemistry piece, that likability piece, is what suffers as a result. Guardians, character and competency, never going to be the problem, really detail orientated. Chemistry is always going to be the thing which Guardians are going to struggle with. No huge surprise there. That actually likability feels like it's kind of it's a nice to have, but it's not an essential. What I think is really interesting with the Guardian one is that credibility piece, because you think surely for a Guardian, like credibility is up there, right? I know my stuff. But the challenge is that for a Guardian, they know all the stuff. They've done a lot of research in this, and they want you to know how credible they are. And so actually what they can end up doing is they can overwhelm you with the information that they know, which actually makes them less relevant. So if I say to you, oh, I'm just going to top up the car, like, where's the petrol cap? And you go, did you know in 1922 the petrol engine was first invented? I don't care. Like, just tell me where the petrol cap is. That's the only thing I need to know right now. So for a Guardian, sometimes that credibility can suffer because we're so keen to kind of share everything. Um, Connectors, again, chemistry, like out of all of the voices, probably they are the ones who are the most likable. They work the hardest on that kind of getting people to like them. People want to work with them. They want to be collaborative. That's a huge part of who they are. That where they struggle is kind of double. It's on the competency and it's on the character piece, and it's a combination. So I'm sure you kind of talked about this before, but for connectors, often when they start to sell an idea, it feels a bit car salesman-y. That it feels like that I only really care about getting you across the line. That's it. And for a connector, they hate that because that integrity piece is really important for a connector. Like, I'm not going to sell you something unless I genuinely think it's going to change your world. But then the knock on off the back of that is that also for connectors, because they have a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver, it means that actually often they'll end up missing the mark on saying that they deliver on something and they're not actually managing to follow through on that. Finally, for pioneers, so I'm a pioneer myself. Pioneers, like, competency is their love language. Like, they are desperate to be seen as competent, desperate to be seen as credible. They will go over and above to try and prove that competency, prove that credibility. I always say for a pioneer, if you really want red flag to a bull, just say to a pioneer, I just don't think you can do that. And off they go. But the knock on is that there's so much priority put on that competency and credibility that the character and the chemistry is what suffers within that. And so what's really common is that actually, and I say this as a pioneer myself, if you're being nice to someone, then there's an agenda to it. Like, my wife often says, like, it's okay to have a conversation without an agenda. And I'm like, is it? Like, that there's that kind of, for a pioneer, there is that kind of strategic element that, like, what is it that I want to walk away from this with? And so it's really easy if you're working with a pioneer that if they're suddenly being nice to you, the question you're immediately asking is, what do you really want? What's this really about? Like, just get to the ask. So with each of these, kind of recognizing where our blind spots is and kind of whatever your kind of corresponding voice might be, whether you've looked at that and that feels like it's kind of that conscious incompetence, like, I totally know that about myself, or it might be that, kind of as I've been explaining it, you kind of like, oh, flip, yeah, no, I do that. So before I kind of shift off that slide, first, if you want to take a photo of that, and that's great. Was there any questions on that before we kind of dive into our groups? No? Great. Okay, so what we're going to do in that case then is we are going to go into our breakout rooms. So I want you to think about two questions. So the first one is, which of those 4 C's do you lead with? Which one do you feel most confident in? Is it character, is it chemistry, competency, or credibility? And then where do you personally see your biggest growth area? Which is the one which feels more left hand? You've got to be more intentional about making sure that you compensate off the other side. So great. I think Claire's going to pop us into groups and then we'll come back and feedback. Great. Welcome back.
It always ends so quickly. We were like mid-sentence, boom.
I was saying it's always like when you're facilitating these, the worst thing is when kind of the second you have the option to get out the room, there's a one group which are like, get out. So the fact that you're all mid-sentence is great. I'm very happy about that. Brilliant. Alex, seeing as you've ousted yourself there as being mid-sentence, I'll let you finish your sentence. Do you wanna feedback for the group to us?
I was with Leanne, and we had I think a pretty good chat. It was, I think, interesting for us trying to figure out how much of what we're doing is sort of a natural, intrinsic who we are kind of person, or is it because this is the kind of job we have, this is who we are, this is to achieve what we need to achieve? Have we developed these skills and things so that we can get the outcome that we want? So that was, yeah, that was really kind of interesting to unpack. I mean, everything, I'm a kind of nurture connector person, and it's all pretty much on track for me, you know. So chemistry and vibes and all that are really
Yeah.
important. Everyone having a good time is sometimes trumps, you know, other things like competency or something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting within it because it helps you to figure out what are the non-negotiables for you. So actually for a nurturer, having a team where they're maybe not as competent, so they're whether they're younger or less experienced or just they struggle more, but there's really good team dynamics, that chemistry piece is there, that we really trust each other, that I'm willing to sacrifice the competency piece
Yeah.
if I can have a really strong base. That's so yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Alex. Seems you with Leanne. I'll come across to you, Leanne.
Yeah, I mean, kind of as Alex was saying, one of the things that I did think was interesting though is that so as a pioneer, I would generally agree with this, except that I actually think the character thing is really important for me. Like, and kind of doing what you say you're gonna do. Actually, I would say that that is really important. I would agree that probably the chemistry thing is probably my area of like need to work on that because I was saying to Alex, I don't have a poker face. So if I don't feel like an immediate click with someone, it is probably really obvious. Like I'm not brilliant at pretending that I really click with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's the character piece is a really interesting one because I'm right there with you that actually I really care about that integrity piece. And throughout this, we've kind of talked about that balance between kind of nature and nurture and choice, like the way which we're naturally wired to be, but that the way we've been rewired to be over time. And actually, I always think, especially working in any kind of faith setting, that there is that element of integrity is such an important piece. And so from like, especially if you've been brought up as a Christian, that kind of there is very much that's been something which has been kind of grown and sewn into you. Um, but the challenge is how well that comes across. So how well is that picked up from the other side? So I know, like I have it with like sending text messages. My wife's a nurturer, I'm Pioneer Connector, and I'll write a message, and I've tried so hard on that character piece. Like I'm being really truthful, I'm being really honest, I'm being really on like kind of. I show it to my wife, and she's like, "Oh my word, do you hate this person?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I was really trying. Like, and so yeah, that kind of how well you're able to translate it across is yeah, that's always a huge thing. Brilliant. Thanks, Leanne. Sarah, do you wanna share briefly?
Yeah, so I found this quite funny, really, because I went into a group and bizarrely enough, I'm a green, so I think I'm quite friendly, but I always get anxious on who I'm going to be picked with on this day, so I do. And Kate pops up, and the first thing I said was, "Oh, I'm so glad you're with you. I'm glad with you. You're so nice." And then she says, "Well, what do you think you are?" And I says, "Oh, I says I don't know." And then I said, "Oh, I think it's a chemistry thing." And she said, "Oh, I think you are after what you've said." It's, um, I think that is me. I mean, I suppose being that green is that it's important to me. That is. I'm not saying character's not important because it is, but it's lower down my scale. I do sort of think, do I want to work with you? Do I not want to work with you? Or do you want to work with me? That type of thing. Um, so definitely chemistry, and I have to work towards competency as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think it's so important that for nurturers often that that kind of that element of self-doubt that actually it's really easy as a nurturer to question your own competency and actually almost it's kind of a chicken and egg type situation that often you need to talk about your competency for other people to acknowledge your competency so you feel reaffirmed in your competency, and it's kind of, well, which one comes first within that? How do I find that balance where actually people are recognizing my competency, but they can only do that if I kind of demonstrate and signpost my competency.
That's what we were sort of saying, really. It's that, and I always tend to, like, if I'm talking to my team, I say, "Oh, does this make sense?" And it's like, it makes sense, but because I sort of, it's like, oh, I need to ask that it makes sense. It's
Yeah. And actually, interestingly, within that, that does it make sense piece is, I mean, it's the same thing, but just playing from a different angle. That for a nurturer, and actually for all the feelers, you'll find this, that collaboration is huge. Like, I don't want to be the person leading. I don't want to be the person making all the decisions. I want this to feel like it's a group effort. I want us to feel like we're doing this together. So actually, little things like, does that make sense? What you're trying to do is you're trying to shift it from a I'm telling you what to do to how do we make this decision together? Um, but actually, it's recognizing that actually you're on this call because you're a leader, because actually somebody has recognized competency in you and has said you are the best person to tell us what to do. And that actually often your team, you'll know this if you flip it around to like your managers, like there'll be points where you're like, just tell me what to do. Like, that's what I don't want you, I'm not looking for this to be a discussion. I just want you to give me clear directions within that. So yeah, I think it's a really normal balance to have. Brilliant. Kate, very quickly, while it seems as you guys were together, anything you wanted to kind of add on to that?
Yeah, well, me and Sarah are both nurturers, so we kind of had similar reflections. But yeah, I was just sort of, for myself, reflecting on whether like chemistry or character is like my strength. And I think I value character the most, but I feel like in a work setting, I probably like prioritize chemistry in a weird way of like, I think part of it is probably because I only go into the office like one day a week that I'm like, oh yay, brilliant. This is the fun time of like catching up and like making those like sociable connections. But sometimes I think actually character is what I value the most. So it's just getting that balance, isn't it, of like learned behaviours probably.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think getting that balance is really key. And it's kind of, I really enjoyed that kind of left hand, right hand analogy, that like there are things which are just like, so for you, that chemistry piece, it's just going to ooze out of you. It's naturally going to happen. And so it's trying to think at the other end, like what are the things where I've got to be really intentional about how do I do that? Again, I know that for me as a pioneer, I know that I've almost got to mentally be like, no, I just need to send them a message, not because I wanted a thing, but just to be nice, just to build the chemistry piece. I don't see it as important, but actually I recognize that they see it as important. And actually that leads us really neatly onto our next bit. So one of the things with this influence model, which I really like, is that it's got this dualism to it, that actually what we've all looked at so far is very much that kind of self-reflection piece, that actually what am I aware of, what am I kind of transmitting to other people, but actually equally on the other hand there's what people are receiving from the other end. So Leanne, we talked about that idea that like character is really important, but actually if people aren't picking that up, then there's a breakdown that happens there. And so if we go back to the tool, what you'll notice is that there's these two big red walls, which kind of we call the walls of self-preservation, that essentially is the things which will often hold us back. And we have a wall and the other person has a wall. And for there to be influence built, for there to be that trust and impact, both us and the other person need to lower that wall. And it's really interesting with this, because it kind of, in some ways, it boils down to that idea of confidence. Now, I'm a runner. I don't know if there's other runners on the call. Hopefully, this analogy will feel like it kind of, there's enough kind of cultural reference. I love a marathon. That's kind of my go-to running race. Have people come across the wall in running? Yeah, people heard about this. So when you're running in a marathon, what tends to happen is normally it's somewhere between about 18 and 22 miles. You hit this thing which they call the wall. And before running, I used to naively think it was a physical wall. I'm like to get disorientated, but actually, what it is it's the switch that happens from body to mind. So actually, when you start out, you feel fresh, you feel good, you've done all the training, you've done all the miles, you've done the sessions, like on paper, I have got this. Like I am going to go out, I'm going to run my best time, off I go. But progressively, what happens is that your body starts to hurt, like that it starts sending messages to your brain going, your legs are going to snap, like it's you're going to have a heart attack. You need to stop now. This is not healthy for us. And actually, most of marathon running is that balance, because as soon as your brain starts to go, you know what, my hamstring does hurt. I think I think my hamstring might snap if I keep running. Like that actually what happens is your body responds to that your body takes the feed from what your mind is saying. And so if your mind is saying, I am struggling, the body will actually struggle more off the back of that. So there's this balance between what we see, like the kind of what I'm putting out there, and actually what's happening in our head to go alongside that. And so those two walls of self-preservation, that ultimately they are kind of underpinned by these kind of three core questions. So what am I afraid of losing? What am I trying to hide? And what am I trying to prove, and to who? And ultimately, we have those three questions going on, and the other person has those three questions going on. And it often they're not things that are necessarily seen or talked about. They're kind of their narratives that live in our head. So kind of to unpack some of those, so you might be able to kind of help it kind of resonate with you a little bit. So that first one, like, what is it that I'm afraid of losing? So it might be, you know what, that you're afraid of losing kind of credibility. So you'll over prepare, you'll struggle to delegate maybe because you're afraid that, like, if I drop the ball, like, people will lose confidence in me. So I need to control this. It might be that you're afraid of losing control. So actually, like, I'm going to micromanage because if other people do it differently, I'm afraid that, like, things are going to unravel. That I'm going to lose that control piece. It might be, and we kind of talked a little bit about this, that I'm afraid of losing belonging. That actually, like, I don't disagree with people because people might not like me. That people might not they might not accept me off the back of that. So actually, I'm afraid of that, losing that feeling that people want me to be here. That second question, what is it that I'm trying to hide? Trying to hide incompetence, like as a pioneer, like I'm constantly afraid that, like, I'm kind of blagging it, that, like, at some stage someone's going to find me out. And so ultimately, kind of, you can overcompensate. I'm going to be overly confident. I'm going to be overly certain on this. So I try and hide the fact that I don't really know what I'm talking about here. It might be that you're trying to hide kind of a weakness or kind of a kind of need that you have. I'm afraid of showing kind of how overwhelmed I am, how much support I need here. It might be that you're trying to hide previous failures. Like, actually, I know that I've kind of messed this up previously. And so you end up kind of blaming circumstances or other people because you're trying to kind of hide your own mistakes within that. And in that final one, things you're trying to prove. So it might be that you're trying to prove your worth. Like, I'm overworking because I need you to know how valuable I am. It might be that you're trying to prove that you belong, like that actually, like, there's that sense of feeling like, actually, like, other people feel like I'm a bit of a misfit. So I know that I deserve a seat at the table here, and I'm going to kind of overcompensate to prove that. Or it might just be that you're trying to prove an old audience wrong. Like, in my old job, I always got told this. So in this job, I'm going to really overcompensate and I'm going to prove this. So, I mean, you can take any of those as examples. You can kind of create your own on top of that. But those three questions, I find them so helpful, because ultimately, when we're able to lead out of a place where we have nothing to fear, nothing to hide, nothing to prove, that's the place where we're able to lead with maximum influence. So what I'm going to get us to do is I'm going to get us to go back into our breakout rooms, and I want you to have a think about those three questions. Which of them feels the most relevant to you? And I'm aware that this is a slightly vulnerable topic, so kind of share as much as you want to. But I often think with this that sometimes being able to talk it out, especially for the extroverts, that there's that space that almost as the words leave your mouth, you're like, this is ridiculous. But a bit like that kind of marathon analogy, that often the power of those questions can impact the influence that we have with others. So great, we're going to pop you back into groups, and then we'll come back in a bit and we'll feedback. Welcome back.
Here we go, ladies.
Hello.
How was that?
All right.
Yeah, all good, thank you.
About to say, were you two nurturers in a group? You're kind of like very self-aware.
Well, as I said, I always worry about who I'm going to go with because I worry about this lack of competency and things like that. And it's like, oh, if I'm with someone that's really clever, it's like, oh.
Yeah, no, definitely. Great, welcome back. So have we got some people who are happy to share? So Carl, where's Carl? Oh, I've got it. Carl's not here.
He's not in there.
I've Carl done. Let's go to Hannah. You happy to go?
Yeah, so I was with Larissa, and I started with when I was talking with it to Larissa. It's kind of cop out. I kind of feel like all of those questions kind of merge into one a little bit with me. I know there is the differences in each one, but it is very much around for me because competency on Guardian is really, really important that people do that. And I said that when I was doing some of the prep bit at the weekends, I suddenly went running into a partner to say, I've had a brainwave because I then tell everyone everything, because I want to really prove this fear that they don't actually think I'm good as a HR person, that I tell them all this stuff. I'm actually driving people away. So my fear is actually or potentially me moving into management side and having to delegate. My manager's having a real issue with me actually getting me to delegate to a member of my team. And it's not because I don't trust them and I think they're absolutely brilliant in their role and that kind of thing. But again, it's that fear that I'm handing over to someone else that could potentially affect my own, but I've actually got to flourish and build them up and that kind of thing. So it was a really good conversation with Larissa as to from her experience that she's managed for a long time. So yeah, it's
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so often that those three questions, they're not predicated on fact. It's kind of not wanting to kind of over spiritualize it, but it's kind of it is almost that kind of like Satan in your ear, like kind of feeding you those lies that actually almost in saying them out loud to somebody else, like a manager, you're like, well, obviously this is not true. Obviously, this is not how I'm coming across. And so almost it's kind of, I suppose it's doing that intentional work. It's saying, you know what, actually, this is the thing I'm afraid of in this situation. I know that's not true, so I'm going to make this decision off the back of it. So actually, then there's a space to acknowledge that the fear is there. So again, kind of we talked about, especially for Guardians and that chemistry piece, that it's so easy if there is that reluctance there, if there is that hesitation, it's easy to interpret that one way. But actually, if I've got the narrative underneath that like this is the narrative, but like I know it's not true, so I'm kind of reframing it for you, and that helps to address that. So yeah, that's great. Brilliant. Let's go over to Larissa then, as the other half of that pair.
Yeah, I was kind of Hannah and I were obviously talking. So I just kind of said that I think in the course of team management, which I've done kind of in work and also outside of work as well, with like a board, I rapidly realised that this was particularly to do with like I was the chair of like a school trustee board, and when I took it on, mainly because no one else wanted to, I was like, I do not know how to do this, and I really don't know all the details of all of these things. But I'd rapidly realised actually I don't need to know. I don't have to be the most competent or intelligent person in the room. I just need to know how to manage a team really well and pull out everybody's kind of best assets and like use people according to what skill set they have. And I think there's quite a lot of release within that when you're managing a team. you don't have to know how to do everything, but you do need to know what everyone's skill sets are and how to best utilize them. And then also how to set really clear goals with your team of like, my expectation is that you are going to do this, you're going to own this, and I'm going to let you get on with it. And then I'm going to check in with you in a month to check that you've done it. And then we'll keep going that on that route. And I think what we're kind of talking about of like being afraid to lose stuff and of trying to hide things of like, I don't know how to do it. You don't have to say to your team, I actually have got no idea how you're going to do that. But you kind of do say, I know that you can do this, like, and we're going to check in and make sure that you've done it, of like not necessarily airing all of your concerns about your lack of credibility potentially of like, I don't know how to do finance stuff, but I know that you do. It's kind of projecting confidence, isn't it? That we're all going to do this together. And actually that's the beauty of teamwork, is that everybody's completely different. Everyone's got completely different skill sets. And a really good team is where you kind of can pull everybody's strengths out and just give them a really clear direction of where you're going.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think like Claire and myself were talking in the break, vulnerability, like Brené Brown talks about, like the fastest way to build trust is with vulnerability. And so often kind of we assume that it's in that confidence piece, that it's in the kind of like, I'm not going to show you the kind of the breaks, but it's realizing that actually we model something to other people as well. So actually, especially as Pioneer Guardian in particular, like that actually it sometimes feels like kind of that competence piece, so much of our identity is based in that I am competent, that showing any kind of a crack, any kind of a flaw, that the kind of that all of self-preservation question is like, if I tell you that I haven't quite got this, or I need to check someone else, or you should chat to this person because they're so much more informed than I am, the whole thing's just going to shatter. But yeah, Brené Brown talks about that, like if you want, the fastest way to build trust is with vulnerability. And so modeling that vulnerability, one of the things that's really interesting is the more vulnerable we are, the more vulnerable people will be back with us. So actually, if you're thinking about this from a leadership perspective, you're thinking about how do you get your team to be more open on where some of those walls of self-preservation are, that actually part of it is acknowledging yours as well. But yeah, that's great. Brilliant. And finally, Rich, any insights for us?
We went through all three questions. I was with Leanne and Alex, and for me, I think they all underpin. They all come back to wanting to appear that I know I'm competent, I'm good at what I do, I know a lot. So I'll be hiding what I don't know. I'll be worried that I'm caught out, and I'll be trying to prove myself by showing how much I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that so much of this is that kind of it's the know yourself to lead yourself part. So if I put my slides back up again, that actually so often within this, the more we're able to kind of recognize that tendency, like I know that I do this, I know that that's my default, it's my go-to, that actually what that inevitably ends up doing is it has such an impact. If it goes unchecked, it impacts our actions and our consequences and ultimately shapes our reality. And so the more you're able to recognize and know those tendencies, like I know that I do this, how do I now be intentional about making a choice so that I don't end up in the same patterns, but actually that we end up in a better place. So the final little bit I want us to do is last couple of minutes. We're going to get you back into your groups. We're going to do the core model. So out of today, what's something which you kind of recognize, whether that's with those 4 C's that we started with, whether that's with the wall of self-preservation, where do you need to own it? How do you then respond off the back of that? And yeah, what's something which you're going to do that's going to help you to manage to kind of follow through on that. So yeah, we're going to pop you back into your groups for the last couple of minutes, and I want you to kind of pick your most poignant insight from today. Welcome back. Did we cut you mid-sentence again there, Alex?
Yeah, but that's okay. our group, I think, was really cool. So there's lots of ideas.
That's good. Brilliant. Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Sorry, I've picked you out again. Are you happy to go first and share your learnings from this?
Yeah. I mean, I'll let the others do theirs, but just for myself, I think there is that, like you said at the beginning, about nurturers not always feeling like they can speak up in a group and feel the confidence to share their ideas. That would be the thing I would have to, I think, own, is that often in those kind of big team or group settings, I don't always feel like my contribution or influence will have any effect, and as such, I won't necessarily chime in with my input or insights.
Yeah. And I think it's recognizing as a nurturer, and I think it's really interesting because it's one of the real superpowers for a nurturer, but actually it's so easy to forget it. But the real strength of a nurturer is that ability to kind of read the room, to read the people who are in the room. What is it that is needed for this situation? And so there's so much credit in the bank as a nurturer that actually, even if you did say something which wasn't particularly relevant, people won't care, um, because there is so much grace there, because you've spent years kind of banking that. Um, but yeah, it's how do you then spend that out the other side? So
Okay.
yeah, brilliant, great, thanks, Alex. Who are you in a group with?
Leanne and Rich.
Leanne and Rich, great. So I'll come to you, Leanne. What were your takeaways?
I think mainly from the first kind of discussion around chemistry, yeah, just kind of taken a note for myself to probably put more effort in with people that I don't naturally click with.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think um, again, Claire and I were chatting about this. I remember there was on one of the training videos somewhere they kind of threw out this idea that it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. And it's so easy with some of these that we wait for crisis to hit before we try and do something about it. So I'm trying to work with Leanne, and we were kind of clashing, and we really need to work together right now. So now's the point where I'm going to try and invest and put the work in. But actually, something like chemistry, it takes time to bed in. And actually, that's so true of lots of the other things. Like, actually, you don't prove your competency by doing one outstanding thing. Like, you do it on repeat. Like chemistry, you don't prove your integrity by doing it once. That's built over time. And so that idea, I always think what's a really helpful kind of exercise is when I think about broader than just my team, and I think about kind of the organization as a whole, if I had to pick out 4 or 5 people who would be the kind of the key pivotal relationships for me. And actually, I mean, we've joked a couple of times about it, Sarah, that like sometimes our default is that we go to the people who are like us, the people who we like working with, the people who we feel comfortable with, but they're not always the same people as the people who are the strategic people. So who are those people? And what does it look like for me to intentionally try and build that before I need it? So actually, if the chemistry piece, like if I know that as a pioneer I'm going to come across as slightly cold and calculating, how do I work hard so actually you see that more personable side of me? So actually, when I need you to know that I'm like a caring team player, that actually you already know that we've spent time bedding that in, so that I'm not then having to play catch up. So yeah, I always think that kind of wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. That's a kind of helpful little mantra I find. But yeah, great. Rich, you were the third member of that group.
Yep. My calling it is I'm in a new role, and as part of that, I'm getting introduced to a lot of uh, kind of leadership centers through Bible societies in sub-Saharan Africa. That is a context where qualifications, status matter. The person I'm replacing was a Reverend Canon Doctor. I am a Mister. I feel imposter syndrome, and my tendency would be to try and kind of blag my way through that rather than take a vulnerable approach. But I actually believe the model of leadership that we want to embody shouldn't be needed to be rubber stamped by secular institutions. So what I need to execute is how do I introduce myself in a way that is honest, true, and feels authentic. rather than being driven by the imposter syndrome. So it's good. It's very timely, very timely.
Yeah.
And hopefully they don't all think, oh my goodness, what's BFBS been doing?
So what did you come up with as kind of ways to be able to do that?
I will be introduced to a group next Tuesday evening, so online, and then subsequent ones all over this place. So I need to sit down and write a blurb, is what I need to do. Like a, hi, this is me blurb.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think taking the time to prep, especially someone who's an introvert who wants that kind of you're going to get one shot at this, actually having it kind of written out is really helpful ahead of time. Even for those of us where we're more confident in it. So I mean, I know that I have like a kind of pre-written blurb, like when I introduce myself, I've got two or three of them which I use in different things. We're just taking the time to really think that through and how would I adjust that for different audiences. Um, the other thing, which kind of going back to that kind of transmitting receiving part, which is really helpful. It sounds like you're kind of dealing with a lot of thinkers where actually that competence piece is so high. That actually one of the big pieces within that is the idea that kind of calling out somebody else's competence can sometimes be as effective as proving your own competence. Because one of the big things, and I think it's Charles Duhigg talks about, like that you're looking for like mutual ground. So actually, if you've done a little bit of research about who's in the room beforehand, if I'm able to say, oh, like you're a leader of a big theological college, like how did you get into that? Like I've recognized your competence within that, but then you're going to share a little bit more of that story. That might give me something else that I can be like, actually, like I've got a similar situation there, that it helps like by them showing their competence, it helps you to be able to find those hooks where you can demonstrate kind of parallel competence. So that might be another way to tackle it.
Nice. Thanks, Jimmy.
Brilliant. Great. Hannah, you happy to go next?
Was that me? Sorry, who was?
Yes. Yeah, is that
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yes, so my one is the light bulb moment of too much blue, for me. So the aim is to kind of really hone in on what is the question that the person's asking, and then just answer it, Hannah, and drop my non-technical blue fluff that I tried to throw with everything else, and then to actually then see how that happens over the next kind of month. And do people come back and ask me questions and not have run for the miles? And then the other one is the negative, the negative self-talk. Some of the feedback I've had is about my confidence level. So actually to challenge that negative talk, and I know this one isn't going to happen overnight thing, but then when we come to do the next round of 360 feedback, see if actually is that common theme of my confidence bit still coming up, whereas actually if I challenge and not do the self negative talk and actually do the positive, hopefully then the brain will wire and actually be more confident and to put my thoughts across. So I've got kind of a two different avenue, one which is going to take longer, and one hopefully that I can do kind of immediately and drop some of my blue
Yeah.
fluff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that self-doubt piece is so often it's underpinned by those kind of those three questions from the wall of self-preservation. And so being able to kind of dig into those, like what do they look like? Where do they come from?
Yeah.
That actually sometimes that can be the biggest thing that kind of gives us that relief. Like I really like that analogy of kind of running a marathon, because actually the way that you get through it is you have to kind of have little mantras that you tell yourself, like I've done the training, like I can do this distance, like I run faster than this, like that it's kind of you've almost got to remind yourself of why you have the ability to do that. So it might be that kind of actually you want to make yourself a little thing that every time you want to do that kind of negative down talk, that you have to stop yourself, and before you're allowed to say a negative, you have to say a positive about yourself.
Yeah.
Um, there's a theory that I really like, which is it's called the gap and the gain. It comes from a book called 10x is easier than 2x. But it talks about the difference between um, if we think about where we are, our tendency is always to focus on where we want to get to. And actually that feels so far away. And that's where those questions come in. Like, here's all the bits that I suck at, and the bits which I don't know, and things I'm insecure about. But actually, we never focus on the game. Like, that's where I started, and this is where I am now. And so actually sometimes even the reshift in view of being able to remember, like, this is how far I've come, and being able to lead out that as a place is, yeah, again, it's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. And who are you with, Hannah?
I was with Larissa.
With Larissa. Great. Larissa, how about you? What were your takeaways?
I was actually doing, I can't remember, one of the sessions yesterday before we had a team meeting. We had like a big fundraising team meeting yesterday, and it was talking about I think one of the X challenges was like, look at your team and see what kind of areas of self-preservation there is within your team. And we had a really great meeting yesterday, and I was kind of sat there sort of looking around the room thinking, actually, I don't think within our team that we have this kind of attitude of self-preservation. I think we've got a really good, like, we're able to be vulnerable with each other. We're able to kind of say, this thing is not going well. Like, can you guys help me? Can we do some brainstorming together? Like, how do we hit this target? Or like, we're really behind. What can we do to kind of get here? So I was kind of, rather than thinking about, oh, how can we improve this, I would kind of say I was really encouraged that actually I think we're in a really great place. And I think that is also a lot to do with, so Beth, who is a nurturer, runs our team, and she's brought like a really kind of quite a gentle, sort of gracious spirit to our team, because it certainly hasn't always been like that. Where we all feel quite sort of comfortable, and like it's okay to everything not be going brilliantly, and like just kind of working on, let's just keep going. Like, it's really interesting how the expectation is exactly the same, but the feeling within the team of like, we've all got the same targets, and actually they keep going up every year, but not having the kind of like any negative pressure on us to kind of hit those targets, but like a more of a gentle encouragement to hit them, makes like a really big psychological difference in the way you relate to each other. So yeah, I was very encouraged by that.
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, so much of that links back. So kind of where you guys looked at the kind of support challenge matrix. It's that idea that kind of you want to be up in that liberate space, but so often you kind of you negate on one or the other. And so, like, especially as a pioneer, that's so often that we negate on the support piece. But it sounds like actually what you've got in your team as a balance is that you've got a nurturer who's always going to bring that support piece, but actually they're being clear on their expectations, so they're bringing that challenge piece that goes alongside it. And so, yeah, when you've got both of those and they're well balanced, that's the place where actually, yeah, people feel they feel like they're being called up in their leadership rather than kind of called out. So yeah, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks, Larissa. Kate, you have to go next.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was just kind of reflecting on how competency is the one that I want to grow in terms of like kind of showcasing that, but also weirdly I was reflecting on like kind of working through the three questions of like, I do sort of have a fear of feeling like I look incompetent, even though I actually don't necessarily, like, it's not in my nature to like therefore correct it. So yeah, just kind of that weird like unhelpful blend of things really. But yeah, so I've just sort of like identified a few sort of pieces of work, things like that, and that I'm focusing on at the minute, where I can apply, like, I do have the knowledge and the competency to like improve these. So it's just actually making sure I just have the confidence to do that. And also something I've kind of been trying to do as I'm growing more awareness in this, and is rather than like, because I think when I feel like I'm trying to show my competence, it like because I'm like that kind of green nurture, that it makes me feel like, oh no, I'm just looking like I'm bragging or showing off or like trying to take over or whatever. But like I'm trying to sort of reframe it so I'm not applying that thinking and more applying like how can I actually improve this and like how can I help this piece of work, this project, like grow into something that is better rather than me being like, oh, I shouldn't do that, or like, oh, it just makes me look like I'm bragging. So yeah.
Yeah. I think as a nurturer, there is always that sense that kind of, I mean, kind of going back to the support and challenge matrix, we talk about the fact that um, for your feelers that kind of you've got way more give on the challenge spectrum than you think you do. And similarly for the thinkers, they've got way more give on the support spectrum. Like my version of like a 10 out of 10 support for my nurturer wife is like a 4 out of 10. So it's kind of it's similar in this context that as a nurturer, at that point where you're being like obnoxious and braggy, you're probably like a 4 out of 10. Like, but it's kind of it's barely hitting the Richter scale. Like, um, so actually within that, there's you're almost learning to lean into that because the risk is that you end out compensating based on the kind of scale which you've created in your head, and actually it just doesn't move the needle at all. That it's so easy for a nurturer to kind of show you that sign of competence and for everybody else in the room to miss it. So it's kind of how do I find ways where I can kind of help you to recognize and see that? Not because I need the acknowledgement, but because actually what it does is it gives you confidence as a team. You're like, great, we've got this. It's not a problem. Um, yeah, kind of. I'm using a running analogy. Like we've just entered. We've got two young kids. We've just entered the world of PE sports days, and kind of sometimes you get kind of paired up in a little relay race. And it's that point where if someone in your team tells you that like, oh, they used to be an Olympian, there's a confidence in that. You're like, oh my word, we're going to win this. This is amazing. Like you're not like show off, like because actually within that they're sharing that not because they want to show off, but they're sharing it because they want the team to win. That actually that the motivation behind it is for you rather than for themselves. And as a nurturer, like everything you say is going to come across with that. Like I am for you, I am for the team. So yeah, be more braggy. Great. And then finally, Sarah, what were your takeaways?
So I liked what Larissa said about when she was chair of the board and she didn't know everything. And I thought that was quite encouraging, really, for me, because maybe I'm not meant to know everything. So I run the facilities team, so we look after the building. And if anybody knows me, going on the roof at Bible Society is something I don't need to do. I can't do because I'm frightened of heights. And but I let the boys do that because I know they're good at it. But I need to implement that more with more of a confidence, I think. And so I'm going to look it up in my competencies and thinking, okay, yeah, I don't need to know that, but so and so knows that, and I'm going to give that to them rather than try and think I know and fob off that I know when I don't really. And I'm going to try not to put, I hope this makes sense, as my little, "Mm, is this right?" sort of thing at the bottom of my messages. I'm going to try and be a bit more confident. So thank you, Larissa, for what you said. It was really quite enlightening, and I thought, yeah, I can do that. It's so that's what I'm going to have a practice.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Um, with the I hope this makes sense. Like recognizing why it is that you want to say that. Actually, like a really easy reframing of the same question is, let me know if you have any questions. Because that's what you're saying. You're saying like, be collaborative, come back to me, like let's chat this through. But I hope this makes sense. It's kind of self-degrading. It's like I have
Mm.
communicated this well. Let me know if you have any questions. You're flipping it onto them. Like it's a question of your competence rather than my competence. So yeah, that might be a kind
Yeah,
of good middle ground if you
yeah.
still feel the need for a filler sentence. Great. Claire, any insights you want to share having sat through the background of this?
Yeah, I think the Jim and I were just chatting in the in one of the breaks saying I think it's really important to acknowledge everyone's willingness here to do the self-reflection piece, because there are so many people that will get to the red light and just stop because they are their whole self is built around an identity that they just cannot cope with looking at. So yeah, you're already sort of half of the way there from the fact that you're doing this course. All of you, Sarah as well.
No, that's great. Brilliant. Well, we're coming down a little bit early. I kind of got to the end of that last breakout session and I said to Claire, I was like, oh my word, we're overrunning on time. And she said, no, you've got until 12. I was like, great, loads of time, like an extra bonus half hour. So you can recoup 5 minutes of your day. Yeah, most people are pretty happy to get 5 minutes extra on the email. But thank you all for coming. And yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, either feel free to hang around for 5 minutes. I'm very happy to kind of try and answer those, or you can follow up with Laura or Claire. And yeah, I think that's kind of, yeah, anything to add from your end, Claire?
No, just to say that we said the same to the group yesterday. If there's anything that has kind of come up today that you think you would like to have a little bit of a deeper dive on, I will put the invitation in the email. If anybody wants to do a one-to-one on anything with me, just ping back an email and we can get that in the diary.
Brilliant.
Super. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.